Chapter 12, Few Are Chosen. It was apparent to Alex and Rodney that this time, the FBI agents had arrived with an entirely new agenda. Instead of only 2 men in a lone sedan, they now had 2 large black SUVs, 4 armed chaperones along with police escorts to accompany them to wherever their destination would be. The agents had assured Alex, Rodney, and their grandfather, that they were only being questioned regarding the incident at the VLA on Saturday morning and that no one was being arrested for any crimes. Although Alex was skeptical about that, the agents gave Rodney time to call Marlene on the phone and have her drive over and pick up the boys first. Alex had reassured the agents that there would be no problems or resistance on their part as they were directed to the awaiting vehicles. If a few moments Marlene arrived and Rodney and Alex could tell, she was ready for a fight. "Rodney? I can't believe the 3 of you just agreed to go along with these characters." Marlene gave the agents an angry stare and felt no shame in revealing her true feelings. "I just got off the phone with Raul Zamora, our attorney," said Marlene, loudly enough to be sure that the agents could hear her. "And he said by no means can they force you to go along with them if they don't have a warrant." She walked over to the agents and stared them in the eye. "Well? Where is your warrant?" "Huh," she insisted, continuing to stare the agents down. The agents just stared silently back at her, no response. Rodney looked towards Alex and rolled his eyes. "Marlene, come here for a second, will you? Please?" Rodney asked. When she was close enough, he whispered something to her that no one else could hear. Marlene turned around and returned to the car, motioning for Seth and Jimmy to get in. As Marlene and the 2 boys began to walk towards the car, Jimmy hesitated for a moment, looking back at his dad and Grandpa JJ. Suddenly, he turned quickly and ran over to the black SUV that his dad and Grandpa JJ were about to climb into. "Jimmy, you can't come with us. Go on home with Aunt Marlene, please. We'll be home in a little while after they ask us a few questions. We didn't do anything wrong. We will be all right," Alex pleaded. Jimmy shook his head. "No, Dad, I'm going with you and Grandpa JJ, I have to," he insisted. Alex could see the fear and panic rising in Jimmy's face and his shoulders were tensing up, a habit of Jimmy's whenever he was nervous or anxious about something. "Jimmy?" he pleaded again, holding him gently by the shoulders. Marlene immediately ran over to the SUV, to help take Jimmy back to her car. She started to say something. Alex raised his hand up gently toward her. "It's okay, Marlene, Jimmy's coming with me." He looked at Jimmy and could see him already beginning to relax in his shoulders. "Marlene, keep an eye on Leanne for me please, until we get back, and let her know we are okay," Alex asked. Glancing around at all the FBI agents and police escorts who were waiting. "We shouldn't be too long, but just in case," he reached into his pocket and handed Marlene a card. "Here is an important number for you," he winked slightly. "You might be able to reach us at that number in about an hour," he emphasized. Marlene looked surprised and confused at the same time. "What is it with you and my husband, all these mysterious men and, now these weird numbers?" She looked at the card and shook her head. Alex sensed her confusion. "Marlene, just ask Seth about those numbers, okay? He can explain them, he's a bright kid you know." Alex added. "I know," a frustrated Marlene answered. She quickly grabbed the card from Alex's hand. Holding onto it tightly in her fist, Marlene returned to her car. "It must be some kind of brother thing," she mumbled to herself as she climbed into the front seat. She sat there a moment or two and watched as the 4 of them were all being placed into the back seats of 2 large SUVs, feeling terribly helpless, scared and damned angry. As Marlene sat angrily watching, the 2 large SUVs and their police escorts all drove quickly off down the street. Marlene sighed and glanced down at the card that Alex had given her a few moments ago and read the numbers again softly that were scribbled at the bottom. 33.6773 N 106.4754 W, she read. "Trinity site," she paused. "What the hell is all that supposed mean?" "That's easy, Mom. That's where they have to go to meet the spaceship in an hour," answered Seth from the back seat of the car. Sometime around 6 p.m., Colonel Karen Schmidt came strolling into the communications center where Hunter, Stevens, and Drake had been working since the latest signal, seemingly in no particular hurry. "Hey, you guys, General Coulter wants all the staff to meet in the operations center in 15 minutes, and he has important news for everyone." She stopped to look around the room, peeking at Drake's computer and the food on the table. "You guys okay in here? You need anything?" she asked. She's a little late for that, Stevens thought. "No, we're fine here," she said. "Great, well, we see you in 15 minutes then." Colonel Schmidt turned and left the room. Drake and Hunter watched Schmidt leave and turned around to notice the look that Stevens had on her face as she watched Schmidt leave. "You don't like her, do you?" said Drake quietly. "She's just so bossy," Stevens insisted. Hunter chuckled. "Of course, she's military, all the way, that should explain everything, Alice. She's up to something, I can just tell it." Stevens mumbled, as she finished off the last bite of pizza she had grabbed earlier from the fridge in the cafeteria. A few minutes later, Hunter, Stevens, and Drake made their way into the main operations center, fully expecting to see a room full of people assembled for the staff meeting, but there were only a handful of people standing around. Most of them, except for Colonel Schmidt and one other NASA technician, were Array staff workers who were quarantined like they were. Hunter drew a deep breath and began to say something but was quickly cut short by Schmidt. "Hunter, General Coulter wanted me to relay to you and your staff that he wished to thank you all very much for your help. Your assistance has been greatly appreciated in resolving this incident. And since the matter has now been resolved, you and your staff are all free to leave, after of course making whatever phone calls you need to make to your families, and of course taking care of your equipment here at the Array." There was silence for a few moments. Some were obviously pleased, while others looked somewhat confused. "What? We're done, just like that?" asked Stevens. "Yes, just like that," Schmidt replied. "General Coulter would have told you himself, but he felt it was important that he be present during the interrogation of the 3 suspects we are now holding in Socorro." "You now have suspects in custody?" Hunter asked. He then realized she said 3 suspects. "Would these suspects happen to be the 3 men living in Socorro?" he asked. "Yes, they are, and we now have those 3 men in custody. Over the last several hours we have had agents monitoring these 3 gentlemen who we believe are responsible for the communications problems at the Array yesterday afternoon as well as this afternoon," explained Schmidt. "She seems rather proud of herself even though we did all the work," thought Hunter. Alice Stevens stood up, facing Schmidt. "Why weren't we told about all of this hours ago, instead of making us wait so long?" Stevens asked, beginning to feel like someone who's had been taken advantage of. "I'm sorry, Miss Stevens, I just found out about this myself. I am sure General Coulter had reasons for not telling us," Colonel Schmidt explained. "Anyone have any more questions?" Schmidt asked, looking around the room. "Very well, thank you again, and have a great evening, everyone." Schmidt turned and left the room. The room was silent, as Hunter, Stevens and Drake looked incredulously at each other. "I just can't believe it, just can't," Drake mumbled to himself. "Don't worry, Drake, now you can go back to old boring life of studying pulsars, and quasars, and normal things like that," Hunter joked. "Go home, get some sleep, and we'll be back to work as usual in a few days," he smiled. "I like that idea. Besides, I'm getting a little tired anyway with all this cloak and dagger stuff." "You don't get it, do you, Hunter?" Drake stared with disbelief at the door where Schmidt had just left, shaking his head. "They don't either, I guess, whoever these 3 men are. There's no way they could have pulled this thing off," Drake insisted. "Coulter thinks he's solved this problem. He thinks he's got his bad guy terrorists, and now he's happy. But I'm telling you guys, no terrorist group on Earth has the technical ability to do this. Something big is going on right under their noses and they don't even know it." Drake continued. "I'm with Drake on this one, Hunter," Stevens added. "I think he's on to something." Hunter shook his head, confused. "Aw, come on, not you too." Hunter looked surprised and somewhat annoyed. Alice, I thought you were the one who wanted to go home and put on some clean clothes and go to sleep, in a real bed? Hunter said half-jokingly. Hunter stopped for a moment to take a deep breath, hanging his head down in thought and scratching under his ear, as he always did when he was uncertain about something. Okay, I guess it does bother me a little bit. Those men we told them about, they sure didn't seem to be the type to do something like this. So, what do you suggest then, Drake? He asked. Well, I don't think anyone on the General's team realized that the message we received earlier included a specific location, said Drake. Well, even if they did, what good is it to have a location, Drake, if you don't have all the information? Asked Stevens. What do you mean? Drake asked. Well, if I want to go see a movie, I usually need to know the time and place of the movie as well as which theater it's showing in, Stevens suggested. Drake stared at the wall for a few moments, then reached up and slapped his forehead. Damn, I should have thought of that. He then turned back to his computer, typing rapidly on the keys. What are you doing now, Drake? Asked Hunter. I am replaying the message from earlier this afternoon to see if I missed something, said Drake. He placed the headphones on his head and grabbed the notepad and pen. In my excitement earlier, I think I may have missed part of the message. A few moments passed as Hunter and Stevens watched him scribbling on the notepad and mumbling incoherently. That's it. Drake tore off his headphones, showing the other two the notepad. Hunter and Stevens read Drake's scribbles. Trinity, 7:20 p.m. There was silence for a few moments until reality dawned on Hunter and Stevens. That's only an hour from now, exclaimed Hunter. Marlene and Seth had been home only a few minutes when the phone began ringing. Bobby and Leanne were in the living room with Nicole watching a movie about pirates and ghosts as Marlene yelled for them to turn the volume down so she could hear the phone call. Hello? Yes, this is Marlene Thompson. How can I help you? The girls were curious about all the commotion and immediately turned down the movie to listen in. Marlene continued her conversation. They are being held for questioning? But my husband was told that it would be only a short interview, with just a few questions, and then they would be released, exclaimed Marlene, as the conversation continued. What? Marlene's voice grew even more agitated and angry. Well, you are going to be hearing from our attorney. I can promise you that. This is unbelievable. This is America, you know, and Marlene continued to speak as a click was heard on the other end of the line. Hello? Hello? She held the phone up in the air. Of all the nerve, they hung up on me. I can't believe it, she yelled. What did they say, Mom? Asked Bobby. That was some man from the FBI telling me that your dad, Grandpa JJ, little Jimmy, and Uncle Alex are being transported to an undisclosed location for questioning by the Department of Homeland Security for an unspecified period of time, Marlene explained, not sure whether to start crying or yell in anger. Mom, they have to meet with the spaceship and give them the sphere in less than an hour at Point Trinity, remember? Said Seth, reminding her of the card in her pocket. Oh right, she removed the card Alex had given her. So, what am I to do with this? She mumbled, looking over the card once again. Why don't we get in the car, drive there and meet them too, Mom? Suggested Seth. It's not that far from here. What? Marlene's eyebrows knitted tightly together for a moment or two, and then relaxed slightly as she heaved a deep sigh. Oh well, what the heck, why not? Those guys are going to have a lot of explaining to do when I see them again. But first I'm calling our attorney to let him know about what is going on. Bobby, you call one of your friends and see if any of them can come watch Nicole for us tonight, okay? She glanced at Bobby, who nodded and ran to the phone. Okay kids, get your stuff together, we're going for a ride, exclaimed Marlene. Hunter, Drake and Stevens headed out of the computer center looking all over the operations center for Colonel Schmidt and any of her team still around when they finally found the few that were left. Colonel Schmidt and 2 assistants were loading equipment into the last NSA helicopters still at the center. Colonel Schmidt, we need to speak with you, interrupted Hunter, Drake and Stevens in unison. It's urgent, added Drake. Schmidt had a large clipboard in her hands, rapidly checking items off on a notepad that was attached and seemed somewhat annoyed at the 3 for the interruption. Yes, go ahead, she answered gruffly. "There's something you should know, Colonel," Drake explained. "There was more to the message earlier this afternoon than your team knew about," said Drake, pausing to gauge her reaction. Schmidt just stared at him. "Go on," she said, breathing a heavy sigh. Drake continued. "The message we received this afternoon included a longitude and latitude location as well as a specific time." Drake swallowed hard, catching her breath. "It was cleverly embedded within the message," he explained. "Go on, I'm listening. This better be good, because I want to get home, and my ride is just about ready," Schmidt insisted. "I have reason to believe there is a planned meeting at the Trinity site, and that meeting is to take place at exactly 7:20 p.m. this evening." Drake paused a moment. Schmidt's expression softened a bit. "Are the three of you all on board with this?" she asked. The other three nodded their heads. Hunter finally spoke up. "Look, Colonel Schmidt, Drake here has been pretty good at deciphering all these signals so far. In fact, he's been right on each time. I think he deserves the benefit of the doubt on this one," Hunter added. Okay. "So, tell me, where is this meeting supposed to take place and when?" asked Schmidt. Suddenly Colonel Schmidt's two-way radio attached to her side beeped loudly. "Excuse me a minute," she quickly grabbed the radio answering the call. "Colonel Schmidt here, what's going on?" The unseen voice answered. "Colonel, we have a problem over here. We've just lost radio contact with the convoy of vehicles who were transporting the 3 suspects from Socorro to Holloman Air Force Base," said the voice. Schmidt heaved a heavy sigh. "Have you notified General Coulter about this?" she asked, obviously agitated. "Well, sir, we've tried to notify them, however we've been having increasing static, trouble with some of our, more static, signals keep getting." The radio transmission abruptly ended. Schmidt started to shake the radio, attempting to regain the signal, without any luck. A grin slowly formed on Hunter's face. "Well, Colonel, it sounds like your people could use some help."
You've been listening to The Thompson Sphere by David E. Farmer, also now available on Amazon's Kindle. Hope you enjoyed this. Stay tuned for more chapters coming soon. Have a great day. Bye-bye.